The ice wall cracks. The 47th floor of Sterling Dynamics buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that preceded a natural disaster. Victor Sterling was having what his employees euphemistically called one of those days, which meant someone was about to become unemployed, and everyone hoped it wouldn't be them. At 35, Victor had built a tech empire that spanned 4 continents, but his reputation for ruthlessness preceded him into every room. His steel-grey eyes could freeze water, and his perfectly tailored black suits seemed designed to announce that he was death in Armani. The employees scattered like startled deer whenever his Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floors. "Mr. Sterling will see you now," his assistant Grace Morgan whispered to the woman waiting in reception, her voice carrying the reverence usually reserved for funeral announcements. Diana Reeves stood with fluid confidence, adjusting her burgundy blazer and checking her silver watch with practiced efficiency. She moved like someone who had never learned that Victor Sterling was supposed to be terrifying, which was her first mistake, or perhaps her greatest strength. Victor's corner office dominated the city skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the world he commanded. He sat behind his obsidian desk like an emperor on his throne, fingers steepled, waiting for another consultant to grovel and promise him miracles. Instead, Diana walked straight to the windows, ignoring his gesture toward the deliberately uncomfortable visitor's chair. "Impressive view," she said, genuine appreciation in her voice, "though I notice you've positioned your desk so visitors can't enjoy it." "Interesting psychological choice." Victor's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Miss Reeves, I presume. Your reputation suggests you're direct." "My reputation probably doesn't mention that I don't play power games," Diana replied, turning to face him with unwavering directness. "I'm here to discuss your company's innovation bottleneck, not to be intimidated by furniture arrangements." For 3 seconds, that felt like 3 centuries, silence filled the room. Through the glass walls, Grace watched, with barely concealed fascination, as someone actually contradicted Victor Sterling and lived to tell about it. "The bottleneck." Victor's voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. "Your leadership style," Diana said matter-of-factly. "Fear might drive short-term results, but it kills creativity. Your development teams are so terrified of disappointing you that they've stopped taking risks. Innovation requires failure, and failure requires trust." Victor leaned back, studying her with predatory intensity. "And you think you can fix that?" "I think you can fix it, if you're willing to admit that being feared and being respected aren't the same thing." Diana's smile was warm, but unflinching. "The question is whether you're interested in building something lasting, or just maintaining your current empire of anxiety." Something shifted in Victor's carefully constructed world, a hairline crack in walls he'd spent decades building. Dangerous territory. 3 weeks into their collaboration, Victor Sterling found himself doing something unprecedented, looking forward to Monday mornings. Diana had transformed his innovation labs from silent museums of fear into buzzing workshops of creativity. Her methods were unorthodox. She held brainstorming sessions where failure was celebrated, created safe spaces for dissent, and somehow made his most timid engineers feel like visionary pioneers. "The quantum encryption project is ahead of schedule," Diana reported during their evening briefing, her laptop casting a soft glow across the darkened office. "Your team has some genuinely brilliant ideas when they're not worried about being fired for thinking outside the box." Victor watched her tuck a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, a gesture that had become dangerously familiar. "You've worked miracles with them. I've just reminded them they're human beings, not productivity algorithms." Diana's eyes met his across the conference table. "Though I suspect you've forgotten that about yourself somewhere along the way." Before Victor could respond, his head of security, Elena Vasquez, appeared in the doorway. Her usually composed expression carried an edge of concern. Mr. Sterling, we need to discuss some unusual activity around the building. Someone's been asking questions about our new consultant. Diana's face went carefully neutral. What kind of questions? The expensive kind, Elena replied cryptically. The kind that suggests someone finds Ms. Reeves's presence here very interesting. That someone turned out to be Marcus Webb, Victor's primary business rival, and the one man who had ever come close to destroying Sterling Dynamics. Marcus ran Titan Corp with the same ruthless efficiency as Victor, but without any of the buried conscience that occasionally troubled Victor's sleep. The next morning, Diana found Marcus waiting by her car in the parking garage, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Diana Reeves," Marcus said, approaching with predatory grace. "I've heard fascinating things about your work with Sterling." "Mr. Webb." Diana's voice remained professionally neutral, though her hand tightened on her briefcase handle. "I wasn't aware you made a habit of lurking in parking garages, only when the opportunity presents itself. You see, I have a proposition that might interest someone with your particular background." Marcus stepped closer, and Diana caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something that felt like danger. "Victor Sterling trusts you. That trust could be quite valuable to the right people. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Not even information about why your legal career really ended. Not even answers about who had enough power to bury a federal investigation." Marcus's smile widened as Diana went very still. "I know things, Diana. Things that Victor might find quite illuminating about his trusted consultant's past." From his office window 47 floors above, Victor watched the encounter through binoculars, his jaw clenched with barely controlled fury. Elena stood beside him, her hand resting on her service weapon. "Want me to intervene?" she asked quietly. Victor watched Diana's body language, the way she held herself despite whatever Marcus was saying. "No, let's see what she does." In the garage, Diana stepped back from Marcus, her expression hardening into something that reminded him why she had once been one of Chicago's most feared corporate attorneys. "Here's my counter-proposal, Marcus. Stay away from me, stay away from Victor, and maybe I won't dig into why Titan Corp's last 3 acquisitions involved suspicious timing around SEC investigations." Marcus's smile faltered slightly. "Careful. Diana, you're in no position to make threats. I'm in exactly the position I choose to be in." Diana unlocked her car with deliberate calm. "And I choose not to be intimidated by men who confuse manipulation with intelligence." As she drove away, Marcus pulled out his phone. "Phase 1 complete. She's more interesting than we anticipated. Time for Phase 2. High above, Victor lowered, his binoculars, something cold and protective settling in his chest. Whatever game Marcus was playing, Diana was now caught in the middle of it. And for the first time in his life, Victor Sterling realized he cared more about someone else's safety than his own strategic advantage. Part 3. The Perfect Storm. The call came on a Thursday morning, when October rain was turning the city grey. Diana was reviewing quarterly projections when her phone buzzed with a number she hadn't seen in 3 years. "Judge Harrison Cross," she answered, her voice carefully controlled. "Diana, my dear, I hope you're well." The voice that had once been her mentor now carried undertones she couldn't quite identify. "I'm calling because your name has surfaced in some concerning contexts. Are you currently working for Victor Sterling?" Diana felt the world tilt slightly. Judge Cross had been her champion during law school, the man who had written her letters of recommendation and guided her early career. He was also the only person who knew the complete truth about why she had left Chicago. "I'm consulting for Sterling Dynamics, yes. Why? Because Victor Sterling is about to become the target of a federal investigation, and your association with him could destroy what's left of your reputation." The judge's tone was paternal but urgent. "There are allegations of market manipulation insider trading, and corporate espionage. If you're involved, I'm not involved in anything illegal, Diana cut him off, though her heart was racing, perhaps not intentionally. But your past makes you vulnerable, Diana. People will assume the worst. You need to distance yourself from Sterling immediately. Diana ended the call with trembling fingers, staring out at the city that had become her sanctuary. Through the glass walls of her temporary office, she could see Victor in a heated discussion with his legal team, his face carved from stone. An hour later, another ghost from the past materialized in Sterling Dynamics' reception area. Rebecca. Sterling was everything Victor was not. Warm where he was cold, impulsive where he was calculated, and armed with the kind of smile that had launched 1,000 tabloid stories. Becky! Victor stood in his office doorway, shock replacing his usual composure. Hello, brother. Rebecca's voice carried 5 years of complicated history. We need to talk. They sat in Victor's office like opposing generals negotiating a ceasefire. The weight of their shared past filling the space between them. You left, Victor said simply. You drove me away, Rebecca replied. But I'm not here to relitigate old wounds. I'm here because you're in danger, and for once, it's not from your own emotional constipation. The perfect storm. The call came on a Thursday morning when October rain was turning the city grey. Diana was reviewing quarterly projections when her phone buzzed with a number she hadn't seen in 3 years. Judge Harrison Cross, she answered, her voice carefully controlled. Diana, my dear, I hope you're well. The voice that had once been her mentor now carried undertones she couldn't quite identify. I'm calling because your name has surfaced in some concerning contexts. Are you currently working for Victor Sterling? Diana felt the world tilt slightly. Judge Cross had been her champion during law school, the man who had written her letters of recommendation and guided her early career. He was also the only person who knew the complete truth about why she had left Chicago. I'm consulting for Sterling Dynamics? Yes. Why? Because Victor Sterling is about to become the target of a federal investigation, and your association with him could destroy what's left of your reputation. The judge's tone was paternal but urgent. There are allegations of market manipulation, insider trading, and corporate espionage. If you're involved, I'm not involved in anything illegal. Diana cut him off, though her heart was racing. Perhaps not intentionally. But your past makes you vulnerable, Diana. People will assume the worst. You need to distance yourself from Sterling immediately. Diana ended the call with trembling fingers, staring out at the city that had become her sanctuary. Through the glass walls of her temporary office, she could see Victor in a heated discussion with his legal team, his face carved from stone. An hour later, another ghost from the past materialized in Sterling Dynamics' reception area. Rebecca. Sterling was everything Victor was not. Warm where he was cold, impulsive where he was calculated, and armed with the kind of smile that had launched 1,000 tabloid stories. Becky? Victor stood in his office doorway, shock replacing his usual composure. Hello, brother. Rebecca's voice carried 5 years of complicated history. We need to talk. They sat in Victor's office like opposing generals negotiating a ceasefire, the weight of their shared past filling the space between them. You left, Victor said simply. You drove me away, Rebecca replied. But I'm not here to relitigate old wounds. I'm here because you're in danger, and for once, it's not from your own emotional constipation. Despite everything, Victor almost smiled. Eloquent as ever. Marcus Webb contacted me last week. He knows about Diana's history, Victor. The whistleblowing, the investigation, all of it. He's planning to use it to destroy both of you. Victor felt something cold wrap around his heart. What exactly does he know? Rebecca pulled out a tablet, scrolling through files that made Victor's blood run cold. He knows she was blacklisted from practicing law. He knows she's been running from her past for 3 years. And he knows that you've been falling in love with someone whose arrival in your life is remarkably convenient. You think she's working for him, Victor said, his voice dangerously quiet. I think she's either the most unlucky woman alive or the most sophisticated con artist Marcus has ever hired. Rebecca leaned forward. Either way, she's going to destroy you. That evening, Diana found Victor on the building's rooftop terrace, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls like fallen stars. He stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. Judge Cross called you, he said without turning around. Yes. Diana's voice was barely audible over the wind. Victor, there are things about my past. I know about your past. The question is whether you're repeating it. Diana felt something break inside her chest. You think I'm here to betray you? Victor finally turned, and the pain in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. I think I'm a fool for wanting to believe otherwise. The storm that had been building for weeks finally broke, washing away the fragile trust they had built and leaving them standing in the ruins of what might have been love. Part 4. When Walls Crumble. The investigative journalist Thomas Hartwell had the kind of face that belonged in old movies, sharp angles, intelligent eyes, and the perpetual expression of someone who had seen too much truth for comfort. He found Diana in her favorite coffee shop, sliding into the opposite booth with the confidence of a man holding all the cards. Diana Reeves, he said, setting a manila folder on the table between them. Former corporate attorney, current consultant, and according to my sources, the key to bringing down Victor Sterling. Diana's coffee turned bitter in her mouth. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about a federal investigation into Sterling Dynamics that's about to go public. Market manipulation, insider trading, corporate espionage, the works. Thomas opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents that made Diana's heart sink. Unless, of course, someone with inside access provides evidence of Sterling's cooperation with federal authorities. You want me to spy on Victor? I want you to do what you've always done. Expose corruption and protect the innocent. Thomas's smile was razor-thin. The story runs tomorrow, unless I receive compelling evidence that Sterling is clean. Your choice. Help me save him or watch him burn. Meanwhile, in Sterling Dynamics' executive suite, Grace Morgan was having the conversation of her lifetime with her boss. At 62, Grace had been Victor's assistant longer than anyone had worked for him, and she was the only employee who remembered when he still smiled. There's something you need to know about Diana, Grace said, her hands folded primly in her lap, despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. Victor looked up from the legal documents that had consumed his attention for days. Grace, I'm not sure I can handle any more revelations about she's been protecting you. Grace's interruption was so uncharacteristic that Victor fell silent. For weeks, I've been watching her deflect phone calls from reporters, redirect suspicious inquiries, and quietly handle situations that could have damaged the company. She's been shielding you from threats you don't even know exist. Victor's world tilted on its axis. What are you talking about? Grace pulled out a thick folder from her desk drawer. I've been keeping records, every strange call, every unusual visitor, every time someone tried to get information about you through unconventional channels. Diana handled most of them before they ever reached your attention. Victor stared at the documentation, seeing weeks of protection disguised as routine administrative work. Why didn't she tell me? Because she was protecting your ability to focus on what matters. And because Grace hesitated, then forged ahead with the loyalty of someone who had watched Victor build his empire from nothing. Because she loves you, you stubborn man. Even a blind person could see that. That evening, Diana sat in Thomas's hotel room, A recording device between them and the weight of impossible choices crushing her chest. Her phone had been buzzing with calls from Victor, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. "The device is simple," Thomas explained. "Just get him talking about the Meridian acquisition. If he's innocent, the recording will prove it. If he's guilty, well, at least you'll know the truth." Diana stared at the small recorder, thinking about Victor's hands when he thought no one was watching, how they trembled slightly when he was alone, betraying the vulnerability he hid from the world. She thought about the way he listened to his employees' ideas with genuine interest once his walls came down. She thought about the night he had told her about his father's suicide, his voice breaking in ways she suspected no one else had ever heard. "I can't do this," she said finally. Thomas's expression hardened. "Then you've chosen his side over justice." "I've chosen his side over manipulation," Diana replied, standing and moving toward the door. "There's a difference." As she left Thomas behind, Diana realized she had finally learned the difference between legal right and moral truth. Some battles were worth fighting, even when you couldn't be certain of victory. Now she just had to convince the man she loved that trust was a risk worth taking. Building something new, Doctor. James Sullivan had been Victor Sterling's therapist for exactly 18 months, which made him one of the longest-standing professional relationships in Victor's adult life. In his modest office overlooking the city park, Dr. Sullivan watched his most challenging patient pace like a caged wolf. "She recorded our conversation," Victor said for the third time, his voice raw with betrayal. "The woman she was working with that journalist all along." "Did she give him the recording?" Dr. Sullivan asked mildly. Victor stopped pacing. "No, she destroyed it. Thomas Hartwell published his story anyway, but without audio evidence. It reads like speculation and gossip." "And how do you feel about that?" "Confused, angry, grateful." Victor collapsed into the leather chair across from Dr. Sullivan. "I don't know how to process someone choosing to protect me when it costs them personally." "Perhaps," Dr. Sullivan suggested gently, "it's time to consider that not everyone who gets close to you has ulterior motives. Perhaps some people are simply worth trusting." That afternoon, Diana was packing her apartment when her best friend Caroline Brooks arrived with wine and tissues, prepared for either celebration or devastation. "The investigation cleared Victor completely," Caroline said, settling onto Diana's couch. "Marcus Webb's illegal activities came to light. Thomas Hartwell's credibility is destroyed, and Sterling Dynamics' stock is higher than ever. So why do you look like someone died?" Diana taped another box closed with unnecessary force. "Because Victor still thinks I betrayed him. Because I lost the man I love trying to save him. Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't lead to happy endings." Caroline studied her friend's face with the insight of someone who had known Diana since college. Or maybe Victor Sterling is just scared and needs time to process the fact that someone finally chose him over everything else. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Caroline answered it, returning with an enormous bouquet of white roses and an envelope marked with Diana's name in Victor's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "My office, tonight, 8 p.m. There are things I need to say. Me." Sterling Dynamics at night was a different creature entirely. The aggressive energy of daytime business had mellowed into something almost peaceful. Diana found Victor in the conference room where they had spent so many late evenings working. Together, the city lights creating patterns on the polished table. "You came," he said, standing when she entered. "You asked." Diana remained near the doorway, uncertain of her welcome. "I know what you did," Victor said quietly. "Grace showed me the files, all the threats you handled, all the problems you solved without telling me, all the ways you protected me when I was too blind to see the danger." Diana's throat tightened. Victor, I know you destroyed the recording that could have cleared your name publicly. I know you chose protecting me over protecting yourself. Victor moved closer, each step deliberate and careful. I know that when everyone else was telling you to run from me, you chose to stay and fight for me instead. I couldn't betray you, Diana whispered, even when staying meant losing you. You didn't lose me, Victor said, reaching for her hands with trembling fingers. I lost myself in fear and suspicion and forgot that love requires courage, not certainty. Diana felt tears she had been holding back for weeks finally fall. I love you, Victor, even when you're impossible and stubborn and convinced that everyone is trying to hurt you. I love you too, Victor replied, the words sounding foreign and wonderful on his tongue. And I'm tired of being afraid of that. When he kissed her, it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings and the kind of trust that could rebuild empires. 6 months later, Sterling Dynamics unveiled its new company culture initiative led by Chief Innovation Officer Diana Reeves Sterling. The program focused on psychological safety, creative risk-taking, and the radical idea that employees performed best when treated as human beings rather than profit-generating machines. Victor still wore his expensive suits and commanded boardrooms with ruthless efficiency, but his employees began to notice something different in his eyes, something that looked suspiciously like happiness. And if sometimes Diana could make the Ice King laugh so hard that his carefully constructed composure cracked entirely, well, that was just another kind of miracle in a world that had taught them both to believe miracles were impossible.